making a stand against the odds. You can feel the heat. It's making or breaking. Try to survive. Don't ever say never. Keep your dream alive. Around the clock, we're gonna rock to the rhythm of the street. Up and down the block. Around the clock, we're gonna rock. Around the clock, we're gonna rock the dreams you give if the streets could talk. Wanna be somebody, be a contender. Gotta reach for the sky. If you want it, fight for it, or kiss it goodbye. It's making it or breaking it. Try to survive.
Mute's still on, Blake. He's Blake. I'm Ronnie. All the good names are taken. Podcast. Another Friday night, Blake, bringing you Friday the 13th content until we get a proper movie. Had some internet breakdowns. You okay?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good. Blake's internet went out at, 9:05 at 8:59. So it's the typical stuff.
Yeah,
Do you
I have 36% battery on this phone, so you better cut the bullshit and get the topic going.
Well, we'll get into that in just a second. I'm going to see really quick. I need help from people in the chat. Let me know with a thumbs up if you can see. I had a card, Blake, that has all of the people that donate and support the show. And I was putting it up with music behind it for the pre-show. But since they're not here, and I obviously can't get technology to work, I'm breaking out the notepad to recognize some of these people real quick, Blake. And if your phone dies, it dies. It's no big deal. We'll go to bed. First off, I'm going to read from the Patreon section, Blake, the people that support us on Patreon. All right, we've got our guy Brett, who's been our first ever supporter and still supports to this day. 56 months in a row he's been donating on Patreon, Blake.
Damn.
Then you got Rebecca, who's on Patreon. 40 straight months. The great thing about Patreon is these people forget they're giving us $1 and you can roll up $20 or $30 from them. Then you got our boy Darren. You got our boy Darren, 21 straight months. And then you've got the newest one, Field of Screams podcast, for the last 3 months. We appreciate every bit of support from you guys. Now here's the long list. I say long list, Blake. Grumpy Goats, that's our YouTube memberships. Reason I'm doing this is I don't think we ever thank these guys enough. TSL Movie Podcast, that's Darren and Frank. It's Darren, 15 months a channel member. Jet Vanian, who's been with us through all the crap, also 15 months. Tommy Knocker, the horror guy, hopefully he's no more DUIs, no more wrecks. 14 months, Blake, and we got to get him on the channel. Jim Bob, 8 months. Hoops Hooper, who is one Australian that doesn't show up and tell us the time, 7 months. Jordan Moran, 5 months. Alley Girl, 4 months. Chris Davis, 4 months. Nick, not Nick Push, our Nick, 3 months. Dave Carney, 2 months. And Pat and Brett from the Halloween podcast. Wait, that Halloween podcast. There's so many damn names to that. Pat and Brett, great show, great channel. Both decided to throw us some charity last month. 1 month apiece, Blake. So thank you to everybody that supports this channel. We really appreciate it.
Hi, Ronnie.
Why are you holding it with your arm?
What else do you want me to do? Hey, my internet's back up, so flip-flop it.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Look at that guy. Hold on. Hold on. It's just me. Let's put him back on. All right. Enough of this. Let's check out and see who is so bored on a Friday night that they're jumping in here, and then we'll explain the rules. Jim Bob's here. I love Jim Bob because he's always saying F and A. Alley Girl's here.
Hot poo.
Gross. I'm 4 drinks in, so I'm pretty effing entertained already. Bud from the Shape of Horror podcast. You guys go out and give Bud a sub. Go support Bud. We were on Bud's channel a couple of weeks ago. Go check it out. Or was it this week?
I think it was last night.
Davey Deathray is in the chat. Y'all go check out his channel. Happy Friday, Davey. Anthony J in the chat with a happy Friday.
Some shit in my eye.
Davey's asking, what is the song from? It's from a movie called DC Cab. Jim Bob saying, bring out the Gimp. Let's see. Here we go. Brett Patrick says, hi, guys. Ronnie, I know you said Harold from part 3 was a slob. I enjoy. No, Brett, I know what you're talking about. It was in the TSL chat earlier today. I wasn't saying anything wrong about it. I like Harold from Friday the 13th part 3 too. But he was a slob, and he makes me sick to think that anybody's eating those peanuts or any of that food in that place. I was not like disagreeing with you or anything. Let's see.
They somehow make Harold a sympathetic character, as nasty as he is.
He is really nasty, and when that goes together, can somebody be extremely nasty and not sympathetic? And if that's the case, do we ever feel any kind of sympathy for the homeless people, Blake? By that theory, we should just keep rolling.
No, I don't give a shit about the homeless. Not one bit.
Nick Push says he is a patron in supporter in spirit. Well, we understand that you dumped all your money into Big Lots. Shape of Horror podcast wants to know how many months he's been a channel member. Rhymes with a 0. So let's see. Blake, somebody obviously has come into some money because we have a super chat, Blake.
No way.
Frank Riker has donated $5. And hold on. I think
his name is Frank. He's supposed to be at work.
I think we break out the Tasty Girl theme for Frank. I don't know if this will get us dinged, but who cares?
Girl, my tasty girl. You're my tasty girl.
This is for you, Frank.
I love to slide off them panties, girl. You're sweeter than candy.
All right, Blake, pick one out. What do we give Frank for this right here?
He gets a DVD of his choice. Oh, you're talking about what video? I don't care.
You know
He
why
gets
they
all-
call me Mo?
No, why?
Because every time people give me money, I always want more.
Oh, do me.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you, Frank. Don't donate any more money. And I didn't even read his message. He says this is for Blake, not Ronnie. So, Blake, you'll be getting that $5
Thanks, man.
and a nice Schwinn bicycle. All right. So, really quickly, we decided we'd hop on tonight and do a Mount Rushmore of Friday the 13th characters. Now, that may seem like it's easy, but there are some rules. And if you've seen the chat, you've seen the rules so far. The rules are you can't choose any final guy or any final girl. And you can't choose anybody with the last name Voorhees or Jarvis, excluding wheelchair Jarvis, Blake. You can use him. And you can't use any character that's never appeared on screen. So we can't have some ass saying, hey, I'm picking Elias Voorhees because he gave birth or he impregnated what's-her-face to Jason or whatever. But anyway, his name's Voorhees, so you can't do that anyway.
Sounds like you're a fan.
Is Elias's last name Voorhees, though, Blake? Or is Pamela? I mean, you got to think. Maybe she was a single mom, never got married. Maybe that's her last name. And, Elias has a different name. I know people are going to say Elias Voorhees was supposed to show up in part 6, blah, blah, blah. And he may be in some of those novelizations. Who's got time to read? But
Ronnie, I disagree. Like doing the whole, hey, we're keeping my name, that's some shit these hoes nowadays would do. They're not doing that back in the 50s. Like, you got knocked up, you giving the dad his last name. So it's Voorhees.
All right, so real quick, cough button going nuts, Blake. I did not get my truck back today, Blake. I never got the call from the mechanic. So if we're keeping score at home, chat, Monday will be 3 weeks since your boy Ronnie has had an automobile to go back and forth to work.
I got you, brother.
Blake is the best because he has been picking me up from and taking me to work every single day. So I love you, brother. Thank you for that. And if by any chance, Frank, you want to donate another $1,450, we can almost get my truck paid for. So, Blake.
Thanks, Allie. It's actually not my poster. It is Ronnie's poster. But he moved it from his storage building to my storage building. So
Harold isn't so bad. Sure, the dude likes to snack around, but his wife's one hell of a nag, and poor guy's bunnies got mangled by Jason. Blake actually thinks that his wife looks good.
Yeah, listen, hot take here. I know I'm alone. Davey, Brad, help me out. If she fixed herself up, I think she's got something going on. No?
Let's see. Blake, what's this last thing right here? What's Cayman Jacks? What does that mean?
Oh, that's our first official sponsor, Ronnie.
Cayman Jacks. There you go.
Yep.
Hold on.
Cayman Jack. They donated $25,000 to tonight's episode.
20? Just 25?
25,000. Yeah.
Hold on. I've got an official bell for that. So there we go. Brett Patrick says he agrees. Jim Bob says he's like a rabid Wolverine. I love Jim Bob.
Dude, y'all know she throws it. She gets down.
Bud says she's a 9.5 for sure. All right, so Blake, do you want to lead it off? Do you want me to lead it? Let's do me a favor. Yeah. Blake, you lead this off, and I'll keep track of it right here on the trusty notepad, and we'll go through, and then if it was
so let's go ahead and get this out of the way real quick, Ronnie. I text you my list, but then at the top of this show, you said you threw in a little kink. No final girls or final guys.
Yes.
And you know I've got Paul on my list. So do I need to scratch Paul off and come up with someone else?
Yes.
Okay. I like it.
So you can go first, explain why. Now, here's the thing. When you see people do Mount Rushmores, it's either because, hold on a second, because I got to say hi to this guy. Jason Drawn's in the chat. Hello, fellas. I get Blake. She's a.
I am stealing that, Jason. I am stealing. Me and Jason just became Facebook friends too. How about that?
That's great. Anyway, Mount Rushmore could be They bring something to the Friday 13th franchise that you can't deny, or it could just be your personal favorites, Blake. I mean, I don't know how to play this to be honest.
Well, that's the fun thing is we come up with the game. It's our rules, and everybody's got to do what we say. So the first person on my Mount Rushmore, Ronnie, does Mount Rushmore make the Mount Rushmore of mountains?
It has to, right? I mean, what are we judging it by? If we're judging it by size, then definitely no.
What about visitors?
Hey, look who we got in the chat, Blake. We got Cody. Crispin Glover's character is an 80s version of this generation of males, ahead of his time.
He's a dead F.
Like all the males ahead of his time.
I got it.
All right, so I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
What was I talking about?
I love how the chat doesn't follow directions either. I mean, put one at a time. We'll go through there. I mean, you guys are nailing off 4 in a row, and the show is going to be over in 10 minutes, which might not be bad because I'll be in the bed in 15.
You just want me to name my 4 and then sign off?
No, Blake. Give me your first one.
My first one is Steve Christie from the original. Now, he's going to be replacing Paul. The reason I picked Steve is because he's arguably the reason that this franchise happens, Ronnie. You know, he's the one who steals money from his parents and reopens the camp. And, you know, that's what sets Mrs. Voorhees off and starts this whole thing, right? Plus, he gives us one of the best lines you and I've quoted, you know, ever since I was a little kid. Oh, hi. What are you doing out in this mess?
So Steve Christie would... Okay, nobody had been to Crystal Lake in years. He's building it back up. Pamela gets killed during that movie, and Paul gives us the story in part 2 that Jason saw it, and he's been on a rampage ever since. So he doesn't open up the camp. Mrs. Voorhees doesn't get killed. Then none of this stuff can happen. That is a good one.
Yeah.
That is a good one. My first one, and I'm thinking, because I wanted to put Steve Christie on the list, but I didn't break it down like you just broke it down.
Yeah, I pulled that out of my ass off the top of my head.
Yeah, you did good.
Because that was Paul's spot.
So let me go ahead and tell you, my Mount Rushmore is going to be like a combination of like characters that made me laugh and characters that contributed to the series. Now, I have a feeling me and Blake are going to have at least 1 or 2 of the same ones. So I'm going to start with a character that really, really made me laugh, Blake. And that was I'm not going to do that. I'm going with Crazy Ralph. I just pivoted. I'm going to go with Crazy Ralph. He's only in 2 movies, but he is one of the most known characters from this franchise. He's only got like, how many lines does he have in the whole entirety of the franchise, Blake? You're all doomed. I tried to warn the others. The most he ever says at one time is when he comes out of the pantry in part 1 and he's talking. So he is like the messenger. You know, he calls himself a messenger of God, there to tell all these kids to get out of there before they get killed. Nobody listens. When you think Friday the 13th, it's almost impossible not to think about Crazy Ralph. Now, I don't know what he brings other than that, but I'm going Crazy Ralph, Blake.
Tommy Wilkins says, good chest muff on Steve Christie.
You know, we've got the absolute best, Blake. We've got the absolute best. Let me go down. Let me go down through here and see if anybody. Bud says he's going Dr. Cruz from part 7. So Bud's not being serious. Blake, I can't take him serious. Jim Bob says you're all doomed is the best line in the series.
Hey, that's a topic too there, Ronnie, but that's not a bad take.
Hey, that's a future show. Go ahead and copyright it right now, Blake. Best lines from Friday the 13th. Nobody else can steal it. All right, Blake, your number 2 person on your Mount Rushmore.
These are in no order of importance, right?
Yeah, it's just 4.
I got Crazy Ralph on mine as well, and it's pretty much.
Hey, you want to do the gimmick? You want to do the gimmick where if you take one and I take one, we can't use the other one?
I asked you that earlier, and you said no. It's not a draft. It's Mount Rushmore.
I don't remember saying that.
Okay, well,
No, do you really want, we can use the same ones, but it's like kind of you'd be scrambling right now to think if you can't use Crazy Ralph. Let's change it up. Let's do that. Come on. Come on.
okay. Well, then I'm gonna have to go. Well, now it changes the game because now I got to hurry up and pick something to screw you over. So I got to go Shelly, and it's only because he introduces the hockey mask. I don't think he's a likable character at all. I argue with any Friday fan over that. He just because he totes around a tackle box, fishing tackle box full of horror shit doesn't make him cool. He's fat. He's got an afro. He wears his jeans all the way up to his neck. And as soon as he don't get no coos from Vera or what's her name, he calls her the B word. He calls her So yeah,
You going with
Shelly? Shelly does introduce the hockey mask, and obviously that changed the entire franchise.
Yeah, and Shelly is not even. We had this debate before at who was the most annoying, and Shelly is without a doubt one of the most annoying characters in the movie, and he never has that moment where you feel sorry for him. Well, not that you feel sorry. He never has that moment where he circles around and becomes somebody you can root for. The last thing we see him doing is trying to pull her into the water. And she asks him, why do you got to do all these things? And he says, it's the only way you're going to like me. And he wanders off like a loser. So, yeah, Shelly's definitely. And the introduction of the Friday 13th mask is what does it. My number 2. Good night, Irene. I probably shouldn't have done the whole. We got to do the same, different ones. You got Steve Christie and you've got Shelly. I've got Crazy Ralph. And I'm going to go. I'm going to go Roy. You're looking at me like I'm stupid.
I'm looking at you because that was my next pick.
I'm going to go Roy because Roy gets a bad rap. Roy is without a doubt, one of the better Friday the 13th sequels. It's just like Friday the 13th Part 4, Part 3, and Part 2. The only difference is you have to be a real creep to really, really like it because there's too much nudity in it for my taste. And they went with the wrong killer at the end. The killer at the end, we've talked about it on this channel before, probably should have been Matt, and Matt have been Joey's dad, and nobody ever knew it. Or just pull the trigger on Tommy Jarvis. I mean, he's disappears for the most of the movie anyway and doesn't have any lines. The reason I say Roy is because Roy has single-handedly, he divided a fan base who could not stand the fact that Friday the 13th did something creative and did a copycat killer. We all saw Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter. We saw Jason get his wig split. He got his melon crushed. We knew he was dead. But at the same time, we're watching all these kills throughout this movie, and we're thinking it's Jason Voorhees. And at the end of it, if the mask would have came off and it would have been Jason's ugly mug, everybody would have been saying, man, that's a great sequel. But it was Roy, and Roy is a copycat, so everybody gives it crap. Nobody gives it crap because of the story, Blake, or the kills. It's just the whole copycat thing. So I'm going with Roy because that's a good movie. All right, we got 2 apiece. Let's check out this chat, and then we're going to go to bed. Hold on. Everybody's saying hey. Let's see.
Hey.
Hey. Here we go. I guess I'll go back up at the end. Bud says that Ralph has an entire monologue at the beginning of Part 7. Yes, he does. But also
still out there.
How about Ted from Part 2 who stayed at the bar and lived? He has to be on there. Stay tuned because he might. Allie says Rick Cologne is on her Mount Rushmore where the red dot goes, you bang. Jim Bob saying definitely Shelly. Nick Push says Vera looking at his wallet was supposed to elicit sympathy, but it didn't. All right. Bud says Roy loved his son. Hey, we've got Pat, that Halloween movie collector, in the chat. Check out his channel.
Dadgummit.
Bree from the remake. Perfect nipple placement, for God's sake. Jim Bob saying part 5 deserves way more love. I do agree with you there. Nick Push says Roy was Corey Cunningham in the mid 80s. And then Jim Bob says if it smells like cologne, leave it alone. Hoops Hoopers in the chat, not telling us what time it is. Can't stick around, but my votes are Ralph, Ethel, Jimmy, and now because you just convinced me, Roy Burns. Blake, real quick, who's Jimmy? Is that the guy from Roadhouse?
When you say Jimmy, I picture the guy from Roadhouse.
Who is Jimmy?
Who is Jim? So you got Jim Bob from part 4. Is that who he's talking about?
You might be talking about
Jimbo?
Bob.
Jimbo, I mean? Yeah, I bet that's who he's talking about.
It'd be great if he was talking about Jimmy from Roadhouse.
That would be great.
Hoops, we love you, man. Hoops, we love you. Get to work.
Be safe, Hoops. Be safe.
Damn job.
All right, Ronnie. Are you ready for my number 3? I'm not going to compare this guy to Brackett, Loomis, or Hunt.
Say goodnight, Denise.
But my next pick has got to be the best law enforcement officer in the entire Friday the 13th franchise. I got to go Sheriff Garris from Part 6, Ronnie.
Sheriff Garris.
He's a really good dad, a protective dad, and he's a really good cop. You know, he is. I mean, from his point of view, Tommy's insane. He goes to the cemetery and you know, like Tommy says, and, you know, he's already filled the hole or whatever. He gave the kid a chance. Not really. Now that I think about it, Tommy busted out and ran toward the cemetery. But still. And when push comes to shove, he could have stayed hidden from Jason. By the way, one of the first few people to actually hide from Jason and be successful.
Yes.
If Megan don't show up, you know, he lives. But Megan shows up, and he has, you know, to get between Jason and his daughter, and he gets his ass folded in half. But he's my number 3 pick of most. What's the name of this show? He's on my Mount Rushmore characters.
Do you think it being the first movie back since Jason was dead and he's dug up that he doesn't have the sensory to find these people that are hiding from him in this part 6, and that's the reason Sheriff was able to hide behind those bushes?
I just think Sheriff Garris is really, really sneaky.
Of hide and seek. I got you. Blake, I'm pausing time because I have Crazy Ralph, Roy, and I'm thinking, okay, there's been some good ones in the chat. I'm not going to do Jim Bob because I don't like that guy.
Jim Bob's in our chat.
Oh, I like him. I'm not going to do Jimbo. I'm not going to do Teddy Bear. I'm not going to do the Hitchhiker. Not going to do Axel. Gosh, I don't want to pick this, but I also feel like I have to, Blake. This is the reason I made the adjustment to the Jarvis name. I'm going with Mark Jarvis from Friday the 13th, Part 2, a.k.a. Wheels, who wants to be an Olympian. He wants to walk. He wants to be a boy. He's out there telling everybody to jog more, even though they're having to push him through the brush. He is about to get a girl, and he takes a machete right to the face and does the perfect balancing act all the way down those steps towards the water. So I'm going with Mark Jarvis, a.k.a. Wheels.
That's a good one.
And plus, it's one of the most iconic deaths in the series.
It is.
You can't talk about deaths in Friday the 13th franchise without talking about Mark Jarvis getting killed. One, because the old horror rules were pregnant people and people in wheelchairs and people that are retarded, they're all safe, okay? And that's not the case in the Friday the 13th. They broke that mold. They killed kids. They killed people in wheelchairs. They killed Ethel and Junior, who are retarded. So there
That's
you
why
go.
We love Jason.
Yeah. He does not, what's the word I'm looking for? Discriminate. Against people. That's my number 3. We got one
So-
left, Blake. Before we do it, let's check what people are saying. We've only got a few people. Allie's saying Trent in 2009, the D-bag we all love to hate. Brett Patrick saying part 6 might have the most amount of these characters we're discussing. Brett, you should know by now, part 6 is the best movie in the franchise. Okay. Or either part 2, whenever we flip the coin. Everybody's
The
going to say
original.
well, that's there too now. Part 4 is almost at, not really. Part 4 is not as good a movie as part 2 anymore, in my opinion.
And I tell you which one fell way off for me on these rewatches is part 3. Part 3's toward
Did it
the
really?
bottom. Yeah, part 3's toward the bottom.
Well, I still like part 3. Jim Bob said the Hitchhiker could get it. Jim Bob said because of the Kung Fu Banana Grip. Brett Patrick said he's quite the arm wrestler. Should have been an over the top. He was. He was the one that got his arm broke. Pat said Demon from part 5, singing with his girl while on the crapper, gets his vote. And Bud says Tina's dad for totally redeeming himself and saving his daughter at the end of the movie. Blake's yawning, so let's get to number 4. Okay, so Blake, while we have a few people in the chat, if you guys can think of any Friday the 13th questions to try and stump me and Blake before we leave here, be thinking of them, and we'll try to answer them. Don't give us any set or anything like that. It's got to be in the movie, as long as it doesn't deal with names. Blake, who's number 4 on your Mount Rushmore for Friday the 13th side characters?
So I was about to say Annie, the original hitchhiker from the original,
That'll be a
because
good
that
one.
was Pamela's first kill in that movie, But I decided to go against that, and I'm keeping it in the same movie. I'm just going with a more popular actor. I'm going to go the character Jack, played by Kevin Bacon.
Oh.
Probably the most famous person in the entire franchise. Had one of the best deaths with the arrow through the neck. He reenacted it on Twitter a couple of weeks ago.
You say his son? You say his son?
Well, I saw something, but yeah. But that's going to round out my Mount Rushmore, Ronnie. Is Kevin Bacon on the end of it, smiling.
Kevin Bacon is it looked like his son washed his hair with grease. I don't even know if that was a guy. I don't even know what it was, but it totally disturbed me, and I think I'm done with Kevin Bacon at this point. All right, Blake, my 4th one, as I'm stalling, I almost went at the very top with this one. Dadgummit. I don't want to take her, but she is memorable. All right, let me run back through the list. You just had a good one with Annie. Annie's got that great death
she's
against
there.
the tree.
She's
I know
there.
she's there. She had that great death with the tree. Okay.
You know what's another good one? Can I help you out? The
Yeah.
guy that gives her a lift and explains the story.
He is a good one. But then you've got Ted. And Ted lived.
Corkscrew.
Not that one, the other Ted. Big, tall, goofy one from part 2. Ain't his name Ted? Yeah.
Red pubes.
Yeah. He lived. And he was like a central character that you expected to die. So, gosh dang it. I'm going with Ethel from part 5 just because of the quotes, just because of the stew, just because of the one-liners. That's one effing ugly guy. Just because of everything. She gave birth to that monster. She's riding around on the back of his dirt bike. It's the most grossest people ever, and they live all around me and Blake anyway. So I'm going to think of one later. I'm going to think of the black guy from Friday 13th Space that's fighting him all the time. He was a good character. There's nobody. I could go with Big Sexy that rides the motorbike in the remake, but the remake doesn't have any good characters. There's nobody in Freddy versus Jason.
Freddy Krueger.
Part 8 has nobody. Part 7 has nobody. Part 6 has nobody left that I want to talk about. I guess I could go with Tony Goldwyn that gets stabbed in the crotch and flipped over. You're not Dirty Harry. I'm going with Ethel because Ethel is a memorable character, great lines, filthy. I'm going to regret it later, but I'm going with Ethel to round out my Mount
How
Rushmore.
about you having two characters from Part 5 in your Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, well, I didn't anticipate it being that way. And now that I'm thinking about it, a decent Friday the 13th fan like we claim to be, I would have went with Annie because Annie is another death that it always shows the throat slit across the tree. But I'm going with Ethel because I'm in a good mood tonight, and she does have maybe she's got the best lines of the franchise as far as comedy lines, just because they're so ridiculous. I got a bomb on me. All right.
So I just hammered you with Steve Christie, Kevin Bacon, Shelley, and Sheriff Garris. I think it's pretty clear who won this matchup.
Well, Sheriff Garris is your weak point because I don't think he's as big of I don't think he serves zero. I think he serves zero purpose. Crazy Ralph matches up with Steve Christie. Roy matches up with Garris. And then you got me on the other two. Shelley giving Jason the mask is iconic. Kevin Bacon getting the arrow through the neck. But could you compare in the chat real quick? What is the best, more memorable death?
It's the wheelchair.
Kevin Bacon,
yeah,
or Mark in the wheelchair. That puts us almost even with you then beating me, like, because I don't know where Roy goes in this whole thing.
I think you got to put Ralph against Shelley, and then I think you may have an argument there.
Well, the good thing is I mean, it's whatever we think, I guess, when it all comes down to it. All right, Cody's got a question. He says, does the final guy live at the end of part 2? Can't think of his name. Blake, what's his name?
Paul.
They loaded him in the ambulance at the end. No, they didn't load him in the ambulance at the end. They loaded just Jenny. So depending on what Reddit forum you're on, Paul dies at the end of part 2. Jenny is back alone at the cabin by herself. And the whole ending with Paul showing up is what's it called, Blake?
Dream
Sequence. And she wakes up from wherever she passed out on, and she's on a stretcher getting wheeled to the ambulance. So Paul's dead. That dog was dead because they found it earlier in the movie. And Jason's laying there with a machete through his shoulder, which brings up the point, Blake. Here's the deal. If Paul died, that means Jason had officially killed him whenever Jenny hit Jason with the machete. That's something we never talk about.
Our chat is saying wheelchair. I love how they refer to a character as wheelchair. Nick, the answer is part 3.
Bud says the pregnant chick from part 3 for being the nicest pregnant chick of all time. She also got killed. Jim Bob says, imagine Ethel all dolled up. And then we got wheelchair. Bud said, I think Paul died because he did. And Nick says, I'm the only, well, hold on. And read this, Blake.
In only one Friday movie, the name Jason isn't mentioned. Which one?
All right. So in only one Friday movie, the name Jason isn't mentioned. It's got to be part 3, right? They never refer to him as Jason. Are we right there?
Yeah, it's part 3.
There we go. You got anything else, Nick? Anybody else in the chat with any more brain busters? Me and Blake are up for another 3 minutes. Give us something. Nick, you owe us $5. I forgot to throw that part in. If we answer your question, you lose money.
Hey, I got a question, Ronnie.
All right.
I asked Vinny either on his stream or on Twitter, do you think Jason remembers Tommy? And out of all the final girls Jason's encountered, which one do you think he remembers?
Tommy.
No, I mean, Jenny. I mean, he killed Alice in part 2, I know, but Trish, Megan, chick from part 3.
You know, the fan in me wants to say that he's going to remember Trish, because she tells him, I'm going to give you something to remember me by right before she splits his hand. So that's pretty cool that she said that. If I had to guess, who gave him the most damage? You would think he would remember the one that's got the superpowers that gets the trees to attack him and stuff.
He probably remembers her, but Chris did some work, man. With the noose and the axe and the shovel.
Stabbed him in the knee. Ran over him. He dove out of the way. You're right. Chris is like the underrated final girl from this series just because she actually squared up against Jason. Trish does a little bit of damage, but Chris does the most damage besides the girl that's got the telekinesis. All right, so Jim Bob's trying to get us, Blake. He wants to know what's the name of the boat in part 8. It's the Lazarus, right?
Lazarus, yeah.
Jim Bob said the FBI gave him the most damage. And Jason goes to hell. They did blow him up. He didn't go back.
It's funny we mentioned Denise. She's in Jason Goes to Hell.
Say goodnight, Denise. Hey, Blake, 2.5 shares of Big Lots coming our way, $5. Allie Girl brings up, hey, Maggot Head, remember me? That's Tommy Jarvis saying that. So no more questions? Blake, I think we came out of this unscathed, proving that and look, to answer your question, there's no way Vinny thought, I called him out on Twitter. There's no way he even thought about that. If Jason leaves the premises like he did, spoiler alert, in Never Hike Alone 2, he would have left the premises way earlier to go get Tommy. Why is he waiting to right now to go get him? What happens that he goes and gets him? They take something out of there?
Yeah. Yeah, they stole something out of Jason's shack or something like that.
Little head?
Little mama head.
All right, Blake, that'll wrap it up. Lots of reviews coming our way. I'm going on vacation starting Monday, but I will have one review set to release next week. Blake, you want to guess which one it is?
No, I don't give a shit. Any chance you stream at night from the condo late at night?
How would I do that, on my phone?
Well, I mean, you can bring the laptop.
I'm not bringing the laptop to work. You think I want to talk to these people on vacation?
You talking to me?
Oh, well, there you go. Blake, who did kill WCW?
I think it was a combination of everyone.
Everybody?
I think it was Vince Russo, Eric Bischoff, Time Warner. I think it was a combination of all of them.
Nash becoming head booker and immediately making himself the champion.
Are you finna sign off?
I was planning on it.
Because I got something to say before you hit the stamp.
Don't do it.
Don't do what?
I know what you're going to do. Guys, next week, Hamburger the Motion Picture, the review will be out. I think that's it. I may release the Thunder in Paradise watch along, Blake, that we did. And I may release the fun time we had with Shane Emerson talking about reasons why we don't go to the movies. The only reason I may not release that and may leave it in the members only section is because there's some language.
Yeah.
Anyway, Blake, that's going to wrap it up. I don't understand the question, Cody.
Hamburger the Motion Picture.
Oh, Hamburger the Motion Picture. It's a great movie from 1986 about a bunch of guys going to Hamburger University to try to get a degree so they can own their own Buster Burger franchise. It's a classic movie with Dick Butkus. So
one of the worst movies you'll ever see. Don't bother.
It's a great movie, Cody, and it's free on YouTube. So go watch it tonight.
I mean, there's a reason.
Then the next week, we've got Suburban Commando with Hulk Hogan that we're going to review. I'm editing that right now. And Blake wants to do Kevin Bacon and Whitewater Summer. So we're going to do that one. And then we're going to finish out the summer by reviewing the 40th anniversary of one of our favorite movies of all time, Blake, Revenge of the Nerds. So we'll make a really big deal about Revenge of the Nerds. I'm talking, Blake, multiple videos, top lines from Revenge of the Nerds, our favorite characters from Revenge of the Nerds, to go along with our good, bad, and ugly that we always do. For everybody that stayed up tonight in the chat, we appreciate it. We really do.
Nerds!
That's all we really got. We'll see you guys live. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that because I did tell you guys to have the notification bell enabled. You never know when we're going to go live. Everybody stay safe this weekend. Love you, Blake.
Love you, buddy.